In a world that still struggles to understand queer identity, these 10 young stars are not just surviving, they are shining. From sci-fi screens to Olympic tracks, each of them is rewriting what it means to be bold, beautiful, and unapologetically real. You may know their faces, but do you know the stories behind the spotlight? Stay with us. You are about to see truth in its most powerful form. In the world of glittering premieres and red carpet chaos, Locke did not enter with a bang, but with quiet depth that made people pause and take notice. Born on the Isle of Man in 2003, far from the heart of Hollywood, Joe grew up in a place where everyone knew your name, and privacy was a luxury. As a child, he was more drawn to theater scripts than soccer matches, more curious about characters than competitions. At just 15 years old, Joe came out as gay, not to shock the world, but to claim space for himself in a society that often demanded silence. His truth, spoken early and without apology, became the foundation for something far greater than fame. It became a quiet revolution. When Netflix introduced Heartstopper to the world, viewers were not just watching a love story unfold, they were witnessing a cultural shift. As Charlie Spring, Joe delivered a performance so pure, so vulnerable, it felt less like acting and more like healing. He did not portray queerness as a spectacle or a plot twist, but as a lived, beautiful reality. Behind the scenes, Joe remained grounded, thoughtful, and fiercely aware of the impact his visibility carried. He understood the weight of representation, not as a burden, but as an honor. Young people from all over the world saw themselves in him, not just because he was gay, but because he was real. Today, Locke is not just an actor. He is a mirror for a generation searching for softness in a hard world. He champions mental health, challenges outdated norms, and refuses to let his age define the depth of his voice. In interviews, he speaks not like a celebrity, but like a friend, one who knows the cost of staying silent and the beauty of speaking up. Joe's journey is not measured in headlines or awards, but in the thousands of hearts he has helped feel less alone. And that, more than any scripted role, is the performance of a lifetime. Before the world knew him as a star hurdler, Trey Cunningham was just a boy in Alabama chasing speed and silence. His legs moved faster than most, but his heart carried a weight that few could see. Growing up in a small southern town meant learning to run not only against the clock, but away from expectations. He was the golden athlete, the hometown hope, but also a young man hiding a truth he was not sure the sports world was ready for. Behind every medal and personal best, there was an inner race happening in parallel. It was not about winning, it was about surviving with dignity, with identity intact. As Trey's career skyrocketed, so did the pressure to maintain the image of the perfect male athlete. But Trey did something that most still hesitate to do. He told the truth. In 2024, when he publicly came out as gay, it was not for applause, it was for freedom, for breath. For every queer athlete still waiting in the shadows of locker rooms and stadiums, the announcement sent ripples through the track and field community, not because it was scandalous, but because it was revolutionary in its calmness. Trey's talent had never been questioned. Now, neither was his courage. And suddenly, LGBTQ+ representation in elite athletics was no longer a future hope. It was a living, breathing reality. Today, Trey Cunningham runs with more than just speed. He runs with purpose. He is not just breaking records, he is breaking open conversations long left untouched in American sports. In interviews, he speaks with clarity and kindness, never preaching, but always present. He reminds the world that strength is not the absence of fear, but the choice to run toward truth regardless. Trey is no longer racing against time. He is setting the pace for what it means to win on your own terms, in your own truth. Josh Cavallo did not just lace up his cleats to play soccer. He stepped onto the pitch with a burden few could understand. For years, he ran drills and played matches under the weight of a secret, knowing that a single sentence could change everything. Born in Australia in 1999, Josh grew up in a sport where toughness was expected and vulnerability was avoided.
Enjoyed football and it wasn't a chore for me. As soon as I picked the ball up, it came pretty natural and I really loved it.
Who he was might end it all. But Josh did not stay silent out of shame. He stayed silent to survive in a game that had never made space for someone like him. Then came the moment that redefined his story. In 2021, Josh Cavallo did what no active top-level professional footballer had done before. He came out as gay. His voice trembled, but his message was strong. Within hours, the world responded, not with hate, but with support. Teammates embraced him. Legends of the sport applauded his bravery. And for once, the roar of the crowd was not just about goals. It was about growth. His story became bigger than soccer. It became a symbol for change, a rallying cry for athletes in every sport, every country, who still wonder if truth can coexist with success. Now, Josh Cavallo stands not only as a talented footballer, but as a global icon of courage. He continues to play, to train, and to inspire. Not because he wants to be remembered for one announcement,
that's where I found my
but
wings
because
in
he
life.
believes visibility
I'm very
saves
proud
lives.
to have done this in
He
South
often speaks
Australia,
about
and there's
the
a reason
emotional
why I
toll
have
of
done it
hiding,
here.
the
Because
relief of coming out, and the new strength he has found in simply being himself. Josh is proving that the most powerful victories do not always happen in front of the goalpost. Sometimes they happen the moment you stop running from yourself and start walking tall into the world. Long before the cameras rolled or the spotlight found them, Lachlan Watson was already navigating a world that struggled to understand them. Growing up in North Carolina, surrounded by Southern traditions and conservative expectations, Lachlan questioned everything, from their place in the world to the labels that never quite fit. Acting started as a form of escape, but quickly became a way to explore and express identity in a way that words alone could not capture. By the time they were cast in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Lachlan had already been doing the hardest kind of work, unlearning what the world told them they had to be, and rewriting their own narrative with honesty and courage. Their portrayal of Theo Putnam was more than just a role. It was a radical act of representation. As one of the first openly non-binary actors to play a non-binary character on mainstream television, Lachlan brought lived experience to the screen, and audiences noticed. There was no performance, no pretense, only truth. Every scene became an act of defiance against the boxes Hollywood had drawn, and every word felt like a gift to those watching from the margins. But Lachlan's impact did not end with the final take. Off-screen, they used their voice to educate, to advocate, and to open doors for others who had long been erased from the frame. Today, Lachlan Watson continues to blur the lines between artist and activist. They speak with clarity about gender identity, mental health, and the complexities of growing up queer in a binary world. There is a quiet fire in them, not loud, not performative, but deeply rooted in lived truth. They remind us that gender is not a performance, and identity is not a costume. In an industry that often values appearance over authenticity, Lachlan stands as a rare kind of rebel, one who transforms visibility into power and vulnerability into strength. When Theo Germaine first stepped onto a film set, they were not just trying to impress directors, they were trying to make space for themselves in an industry that had rarely acknowledged people like them. Growing up in Illinois, Theo knew early on that their experience of gender did not align with what the world expected. It was not about rebellion, but about recognition. As a teenager, Theo began exploring gender identity with honesty and courage, even when there were few role models to look to. Acting became a lifeline, not to escape who they were, but to express it with nuance and depth. Every audition was not just a career move, it was a quiet protest against invisibility. Their breakout role came with The Politician, where Theo portrayed a sharp, unapologetically ambitious character who defied gender norms with grace and confidence. For the first time, audiences saw a non-binary actor playing a character that was not defined by trauma, but by ambition, intellect, and agency. Theo's performance was not about making a statement, it was about being real. They brought subtlety, warmth, and authenticity to a space that often demands performance over presence. Viewers, especially queer youth, saw in Theo a rare reflection, someone thriving in the spotlight without compromising their truth. Outside of acting, Theo Germaine is just as compelling. They speak passionately about gender justice, healthcare access, and the need for systemic change in how stories are told. Their interviews are not scripted, they are sincere. Theo does not seek fame for its own sake, but uses their platform to shift narratives and challenge the status quo. In an era where representation is too often reduced to tokenism, Theo offers something different. A steady, grounded vision of what it means to live openly, speak boldly, and act with purpose. They are not just part of a movement, they are helping to shape its future. Malik Delgaty's journey into the public eye did not follow the traditional script. While many chase fame through television or film festivals, Malik found his platform in an industry often overlooked but deeply influential: adult entertainment. Born in Canada in 2000, Malik was not raised with the promise of stardom. What he had instead was confidence, curiosity, and a body that spoke of discipline and strength. Long before he became a household name in LGBTQ+ circles, he was just another young man searching for autonomy over his image, his voice, and his identity. What set Malik apart was not just physical appearance, but the intentional way he carried himself. In an industry where authenticity can be elusive, Malik turned his visibility into a tool of empowerment.
These beautiful things that I've got, please stay.
Honestly, without shame, and always with a sense of ownership over his narrative. His presence extended beyond the screen. He began modeling for queer fashion campaigns, appearing at pride events, and lending his platform to speak about body positivity and the right to self-expression. Malik's work may have begun in a controversial space, but it quickly grew into something more enduring: cultural relevance. Today, Malik Delgaty stands as a symbol of modern masculinity redefined. He challenges the notion that respectability must come at the cost of truth. He is unapologetically himself, comfortable in his skin, clear about his purpose, and open about his experiences. While some may try to limit him to a single label or industry, Malik continues to blur lines, expand roles, and invite people to rethink how intimacy, identity, and empowerment intersect. In doing so, he reminds us that visibility can be powerful, even when it begins in the most unexpected places. Troye Sivan did not burst onto the scene. He glided in with a quiet grace that caught the world off guard. Born in South Africa and raised in Australia, Troye grew up in a home filled with music, film, and a deep sense of curiosity. By the time he was a teenager, he was already building an audience on YouTube, not by chasing virality, but by simply being himself. His voice, soft, haunting, and emotionally raw, carried something that mainstream pop often lacked: honesty without theatrics. But what made Troye's rise so unique was not just his talent, it was his timing. He came out publicly at 17, long before it became trendy to do so, and at a time when many artists were still advised to keep their identities hidden. With each album, Troye peeled back new layers of queer experience. His music did not just feature catchy hooks, it told stories. Stories of longing, of quiet heartbreak, of love that bloomed behind closed doors. Songs like Youth, My, and 17 became anthems for a generation of LGBTQ+ youth who had never seen their desires reflected in the mainstream with such tenderness. In his visuals, Troye painted a world where queerness was not a spectacle, but a normal, beautiful part of life. And through it all, he remained soft-spoken, never chasing controversy or applause, just crafting art that made people feel seen. Today, Troye Sivan is more than a pop star. He is a cultural touchstone. He has expanded into acting, modeling, and creative direction. But his core message has never changed: authenticity above all. He reminds fans that queerness is not something to overcome, it is something to celebrate. And while the industry often demands louder, flashier performances, Troye continues to prove that there is power in restraint, in vulnerability, and in simply existing as you are. In a world that often confuses loudness with strength, Troye Sivan whispers, and the world still listens. Justice Smith never seemed interested in fitting into Hollywood's mold of what a leading man should be. From the beginning, he brought a different energy to the screen: sharp, introspective, and emotionally grounded. Born in California in 1995, Justice did not come from a long line of actors, but he came with something more valuable: an instinct for truth. He studied theater, honed his craft with discipline, and entered the industry not through shortcuts or spectacle, but through sheer talent. With breakout roles in Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom and Detective Pikachu, he proved that he could hold his own in blockbuster franchises without losing his quiet, soulful edge. But behind the rising career was a man yearning for something deeper than applause. In 2020, at the height of global protests for racial justice, Justice made a decision that surprised many. He came out publicly as a queer man, not as a headline, but as a part of a larger conversation about intersectionality and inclusion. His message was not just about identity, it was about solidarity. He used his platform not to center himself, but to lift others, especially Black queer voices so often ignored. It was a bold move in an industry where many still fear the professional consequences of being fully seen. Justice did not flinch. He stepped forward with grace and clarity, determined to make his truth part of his art. Today, Justice Smith continues to challenge expectations. On screen, he chooses roles that reflect complexity over comfort. Off-screen, he speaks with thoughtfulness about mental health, masculinity, and the need for real representation in entertainment. He does not seek to be anyone's symbol, but his authenticity has made him one nonetheless. In every interview, every performance, every carefully chosen word, Justice reminds us that vulnerability is not weakness, and that strength often looks like a young man standing still in his truth while the world rushes by. Ian Alexander did not wait for permission to exist. They simply stepped into the world as they were and reshaped the space around them. Born in 2001 to a Vietnamese mother and an American father, Ian grew up with the experience of cultural duality and gender exploration woven into their identity. Early on, they faced bullying and isolation, but also discovered strength in online communities, where their voice found resonance. Acting came unexpectedly, but it became a powerful tool. Their first major role in the OA was not just a debut, it was a declaration. Ian was not going to play a part. They were going to live it, fully and unapologetically. Their casting in Star Trek Discovery marked a historic moment. Ian became the first out non-binary actor to appear in the legendary franchise, and their role as Grey Tau was more than symbolic, it was visionary. On a show known for its forward-thinking narratives, Ian brought warmth, depth, and human complexity to a character that challenged long-standing norms. For countless viewers, especially young queer fans, their presence was revolutionary. It told them that they too belonged in the future. Ian's performance was not about being loud. It was about being real, and that quiet authenticity became one of the most powerful messages the series had ever broadcast. Outside of television, Ian Alexander is a fierce advocate for transgender and non-binary rights. They speak candidly about the challenges of being a young, queer Asian American in the entertainment industry. Their social media is a mix of advocacy, vulnerability, and joy, an honest reflection of someone who refuses to shrink for anyone's comfort. Ian is not just breaking barriers, they are rebuilding what representation can look like. And in doing so, they remind us that visibility is not the end goal. It is the beginning of something far more profound: belonging. Liv Hewson never tried to fit into anyone's mold, and that has made all the difference. Born in Canberra, Australia in 1995, Liv grew up with a love for storytelling and a natural defiance of norms. From a young age, they questioned the roles society assigned them, not just on stage, but in life. While other kids rehearsed for school plays, Liv was already experimenting with language, identity, and expression. Acting became more than an artistic outlet, it became a personal revolution. Through performance, Liv found the space to explore the spectrum of gender and the fluidity of self without apology or limitation. Their breakout roles in Santa Clarita Diet and later in Yellow Jackets showcased Liv's range, not just as a performer, but as a force of presence. They portrayed characters with depth, complexity, and quiet resistance, never relying on stereotypes or surface-level charm. Off-screen, Liv began using their platform to speak openly about being non-binary, insisting on the use of they-them pronouns long before mainstream media knew how to navigate the conversation. It was not an act of rebellion, it was an act of clarity. They did not demand acceptance, they embodied it, allowing others to see that gender, like performance, is not a fixed script, it is a living, breathing truth. Today, Liv Hewson is not just acting in series. They are shaping culture. They speak at conferences, write essays, and advocate fiercely for better representation in casting and storytelling. Their courage lies not only in their roles, but in their refusal to be boxed in by expectation. Whether delivering a powerful line on screen or sharing a deeply personal truth in interviews, Liv remains committed to visibility, nuance, and honesty. They are not asking audiences to understand everything about gender. They are inviting them to listen, to learn, and to grow. And in that invitation, Liv has become something rare. Not just a performer, but a pioneer. These 10 voices remind us that visibility is more than fame, it is freedom. In their courage, we find connection. In their truth, we see ourselves. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for choosing to celebrate authenticity with us. If their stories moved you, please like, subscribe, and help us share these powerful journeys with the world. Your support means everything.